The biggest news in the networking industry comes from HPE's announcement that they're buying Juniper in a blockbuster deal to take on the biggest players out there. HPE is gearing up to be an integral part of the new generation of enterprise IT, focused on delivering the products and services that are necessary for the new advancements like AI and hybrid cloud. The first step in this new journey is buying the backbone of the network that cloud providers, service providers, and end users are using on campus. Tom, networking seems to be core to all of the things that are happening in enterprise IT. What's going on here with HPE and Juniper?
It was really shocking to me that essentially one of the largest networking companies out there, I mean, number two, if you want to call it by ports shipped, was looking to buy number three, depending on what you wanted to call it, because I'm sure they'll tell you they're number two in some manner or another. Uh, Back in January, and immediately the wheels started turning, right? Because we've seen HPE do this before when they purchased Aruba Networks and basically made Aruba Networks their networking division. I mean, for a long time, it was Aruba, a Hewlett Packard Enterprise company, and then it was HPE Aruba Networking. And then with the news that Rami Rahim would be taking over as the head of the HPE networking division, and I'm assuming there was a rebrand incoming, it was, big news. Not just that, but the fact that this came out in January, everyone started saying, oh, do they want all of the AI operations functionality that comes with a tool like Marvis? And a lot of people started shaking their heads going, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense, because while you could easily say that either of them was number two in their own unique market, whether it was, port shipped or access point shipped or what have you, there was a real easy dividing line. They weren't number one. We all know who number one is, and they want to take on number one. So why not combine forces? After all, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And if I buy you, you're no longer my enemy. But that's kind of when the wheels started falling off, because what do you think was the first thing that happened after all of this was announced in January? I'll give you a hint. It took about a month and a half before the first lawsuit was filed by the shareholders who said, well, you didn't do your due diligence, and you didn't value the company properly, and you didn't do this, and you didn't do that. And at the time, it sounded like a whole lot of sour grapes, right? There's always going to be investors that are mad that they didn't get their money and they didn't get enough money. And who cares if it's not going to pass regulatory scrutiny because you overvalued the company? I want to get paid. And that's kind of where it felt like it was in limbo for a while, right? Like we didn't even hear anything else about this story for 5 more months. Like we just all went along assuming, like pretty much every acquisition, oh, this is a done deal. We're going to hear this closing in a couple of quarters. There was obviously excitement about it at the big HPE Discover show. I mean, not as much excitement as seeing Jensen Huang on stage in a leather jacket or hearing about some of the other advances, but I think that was actually by design, because of course, thank you, Wall Street, we can't talk about this stuff when it's in process. Well, I mean, Stephen and I can, but the companies involved can't really say anything. And so we get to August and the European Union says, oh, it's good. We're going to go ahead and we're going to approve this, which I thought was really interesting, because we assume anymore that most of these organizations, kind of rubber stamp these approvals, right? As long as there's no glaring issues. I'm talking about you, ARM. There's no like problem, right? But I think a lot of people kind of on that lawsuit side of the house from earlier in the year were hoping that maybe the EU is going to put the brakes on it and say, well, obviously you didn't take a look at this, or there's some other issues that you need to be worried about. So when the rubber stamp came down, everyone's like, oh, well, the EU is probably the one who's going to be the most rigorous on this. So we might as well just assume that it's done. Yeah. Guess who else got a turkey for Thanksgiving that wasn't your family? It was the HPE Juniper merger, because the DOJ kind of announced quietly the day before Thanksgiving, we're going to take a closer look at this because we've got some concerns. And what happened? Well, now we're in a bit of a weird spot, because we've seen the DOJ filing lawsuits to halt other big mergers, airline mergers, grocery store mergers. And there's a real possibility that there could be a lawsuit filed to stop this merger. Of course, as we're recording this, that lawsuit hasn't been filed yet. But there's also a change of administration in the U.S. federal government that's coming in, and a very different DOJ that will be impaneled by the end of January 2025. So the question is, does the DOJ halt this merger now, and does it get stamped by the incoming administration, or will it be the other way around? Will the DOJ kind of say, well, I guess we've got enough to let this go through, and then the new DOJ coming in after January the 20th says, no, 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 we need to take a look at this. What it's doing, honestly, is it's causing a lot of problems for customers. Do I buy HPE Aruba networking access points right now with the possibility that they may not be around in 6 months when this merger goes through? For customers of Juniper Mist, do I buy this knowing that I'm going to have to put an HPE networking sticker on it by summertime? It's created a lot of uncertainty, and if there's one thing customers really don't like, it's uncertainty. So I don't think the deal is going to fall apart absent of any crazy DOJ shenanigans, but I also don't know that the customers are going to be willing to stick with a company that obviously can't get its stuff together. So I don't know. We'll have to see.